I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Stina, for bringing these people together. I admire so many of the people on this panelist's work and inspires me. I'm at Boston University. I teach field methods. I do field methods. And like Mike, I'm an editor um, who is assigning reviewers and making decisions on papers with field methods. So when Stina asked me to do this, I thought I would talk about things that, frankly, like annoy me, things that are not written in the literature and little bugs and things like that. So I thought I would just tackle it from that perspective because there is a lot to talk about with mixed methods, and you've had two really rich examples. Um, there's a great paper by Gibson 2017 that summarizes all the different literatures and different definitions out there for mixed methods. And I think they're all correct. You use numbers, you use words. There are different ways to do it. They can be from the same source or mixed source. And if it's from a different source, you need to explain this. But the bigger problem I see with the papers coming in that I look at is a lot of people confuse mixed methods with triangulation. So I went back to these definitions and I was like, there's got to be a clear way out of here. But the word triangulation really comes from sailing and navigation, where you leverage multiple data points to inform a specific position, right? So if you're leveraging multiple data sources, so anyone who's doing qualitative research, you might have interviews, you might have observations, you might have a mix of things. If that's all related to the same phenomena, if that's the purpose is to enhance the plurality of views, to understand different stakeholders, different perspectives. A shining beacon here is Graham Allison's work on the Cuban Missile Crisis that a lot of people point to. That's probably triangulation. Now, you can triangulation within method or without, but I do see people getting confused about what is mixed method. So I thought I'd try to improve on those definitions, because I think what you need to have is different analytic approaches, as Kim and Aruna showed, to analyze different kinds of data in attempts to counterbalance the methodological weaknesses of one by drawing on the strengths of another. So in a mixed method study, you may not study the same phenomena, right? So if Kim did her research interviewing cattle ranchers, and it's a great paper, I really recommend you read it. She didn't necessarily survey the same people, I think. So you can have in mixed methods different populations or different settings. So if the study was on NASCAR race car drivers, and I want to know, does this affect, I found about identifying with this kind of phenomena hold elsewhere, I could do it in a different study. So that's a big difference between triangulation and methods for me. So I think there are huge benefits to mixed methods. I also think it's really hard. So you already heard about full cycle research, so I won't talk too much about that. But I do want to say sometimes people have a mixed methods program, and like Mike was explaining, that program may not all translate into the papers, and we'll talk about why. But I really applaud efforts to cultivate methodological pluralism. It may, and Mike pointed to saying it may not be in the same person. You might have a team, and that may help you understand the rest of your colleagues, because management in business is essentially a multi-method sport. And the better, richer your toolkit is, the better you will understand other people in the school and department. It can make replication difficult. You may need to cross-train, and Kim and Aruna are masters at this. As an advisor and dissertation chair, if it's a method I'm not known for, I will tell the student they have to bring in a methods expert. So I just graduated Amisha Miller, who did field experiments globally, and we brought in a team of people on the committee because I can't certify the knowledge of field experiments the way Kim can. So you need to think, and what Mike just gave some examples, it can compound review processes. So there are a bunch of choices. I think Kim and Aruna gave you some specific paths, but I find in the literature and the advice out there, they're just really unspecified. So you can do the full circle recipe, but you have to make a choice. Like if you say it's multi-method, your reviewers are going to expect these methods to sort of be equivalent. Or you might have a second method that's a complement. So I have a paper, we have a diff and diff at the end. It's not equivalent, it's a complement. It's like a validating technique. And you can do it sequentially, and you can break these apart even, because you can do the data sequentially or parallel, and you can do analysis sequentially but parallel, and that has different implications for the research design. But the biggest question, I think, is also this question of same source or different source. So I think, one way to think about it is your pool of N, and another is whether it's you're demanding passive or active engagement from the researcher. So that's something to think of. And if you're trying to get to the same pool, you may need to start with a bigger N to account for attrition. Definitely things to avoid is parametric use of one method, which is what Mike was talking. Like, I have 2 studies and neither one of them are very strong. So if I stick them together, will they be stronger? No. If you're dipping back into the well to the same setting, you have to watch out for informant fatigue, when that can affect your data quality, sorry. Quantifying the qualitative without offering interpretation or elaboration, that doesn't really work so well in review. Creating a pastiche or soup of methods where they're not clearly explained or delineated, that doesn't work either. Hoovering data unrelated to the research question or a clear gap, and then not explaining if your methods may not all align up. Especially, there may be reasons for that if it's a different setting or population, and you'll need to deal with that contradiction. So one thing I think people don't talk about in the mixed method literature is differences in populations and sizes. So if you do qual before quant, you're kind of going from a small N study to a big N study, and you need to explain the backdrop for both of those. That's buying you generalization and triangulation. If you're doing quant before qual, and both can be justified and both can be useful for theory building in the full cycle way, but you're going from a large N to a small N, and then you're really looking for elaboration and interpretation, but you might get some triangulation in there too. So those are things to think about, both in the design of how you do it, but also in how you explain it to others, because that is the key skill to getting mixed methods published. Most people will tell you that mixed methods can be great, but Gibson's analysis of 5 years in top journals is that less than 5% of papers published are mixed methods. I think it was 4.45. Why? So Mike hinted at some of the reasons, but I thought I would share some actual reviewer comments and to give you some examples of the kind of feedback we get. One is change your presentation, right? The inductive approach to theory building is interspersed with deductive, which is this is from my own paper, so I'm sharing my reviews. And the way the authors have presented it has undermined the impact of both approaches. Boy, that didn't feel good. You also get feedback like this: take one out. One possibility is remove the quant, providing deeper theory building of your qualitative. Another response is more of both. First, deepen the qual. Second, increase connections between the qual and the quant. And then another response, by the way, all these responses are from the same paper, so that's interesting too. Delineate. Another response you might get is reviewer 3 suggests you present your results in 2 separate phases. It's such that the first would rely on the quant and the second would draw on this theory to formulate and test the hypothesis. So I don't know if Aruna felt this, but instead of this clear frustration from an editor, reviewer, and author, try this. First clarify, do you have mixed methods or triangulation? Call out the objectives and approaches early and give additional signposting. For those of you who might not be familiar with that phrase, it's sort of telling the reader what's coming and why. And with mixed method study, you need more of that. Make sure each method is justified and you have a rationale. And then tie each method to a specific data source and research question. What question does each method answer? This has to be a really close link for your reviewer to get over any kind of resistance or bias they might have. Identify and explain how the population differences and overlap, right? So if that changes, you're going to need some extra explanation there. And then you need some really good transition text to get you from method 1 to 2, or if in Aruna's case, there's a 3. Consider creating a table or figure that kind of integrates all the elements of design so that people can see how different methods relate to each other. And then at the end, you can't have a conclusion for 1 and a conclusion for 2 and then say, my theory is this. You need to integrate different methods to forge a theoretical contribution that kind of swims on top of that. You can always show how the results from one method would have been insufficient. So what you learned as an author from doing all the methods you present, and then share that with your reviewers. So I say, stay strong and carry on and try some of these techniques the next time you are encountering difficulty with publishing mixed methods. And always remember that not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Siobhan. That was extremely insightful.